Imagine waking up and the world is absolutely impossibly silent. Not the quiet of a library or a sleeping city, but a true deafening lack of human sound. No distant traffic, no sirens, no phone notifications, just the wind whistling through skyscrapers built to withstand noise. That's the reality we're diving into today, Taman. We often think about what happens to the buildings and the bridges when we're gone, focusing on decay and rust. But what if the real story, the truly mind-blowing, heart-wrenching legacy, isn't about physical absence at all? What if what remains is something far more profound and utterly unexpected, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the one person left behind to finally press play? Hello, Sahabat, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're peeling back the layers on the world's most baffling mystery. The day everyone simply stopped. It wasn't a slow extinction, not a war, not even a plague that left bodies. The departure was instantaneous, complete, and utterly silent. Think about the sheer logistics of that. Billions of people gone in the span of a single breath. I was just grabbing a coffee, delayed by a ridiculously long queue, and that tiny deviation from my schedule, that single moment of impatience, is why I am standing here talking to you in a world full of ghosts and echoes. Everything was left mid-motion, the coffee pot still dripping, the car idling at the traffic light, the television still broadcasting static. It was unnerving, certainly, but the real mystery, the one that kept me up for weeks, wasn't where they went, but what they intentionally left. For the first few months, the focus was survival, of course, scavenging food, securing shelter, and dealing with the overwhelming, crushing loneliness. The physical evidence of their existence was everywhere, yet the true absence felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I walked through capital cities that were masterpieces of architecture, now just elaborate, silent tombs. But the structures themselves held no answers. They are just brick and steel. The true clue lay in the one thing that should have failed immediately, but strangely persisted: the power grid. Logic dictates that without human intervention, without constant maintenance and fuel replenishment, the complex infrastructure of global electricity should have collapsed in days. But it didn't. Certain major centers, key servers, and strangely robust satellite relays remained fully operational, running on automated systems that seemed designed for infinite autonomy. This realization changed everything. If the goal was simply to leave, why spend the colossal resources and technological effort to ensure the lights stayed on in specific targeted locations? It was a deliberate choice. It suggested a coordinated effort, a final act of maintenance performed right before the vanishing. It wasn't about preserving the cities for themselves. It was about preserving a message for whoever might remain, or perhaps for history itself. This wasn't chaos. It was an organized global exodus, planned with frightening precision. My search immediately narrowed from wandering the physical streets to mapping the functioning digital backbone. I spent the next year traveling across continents, following the faint yet continuous hum of active power substations that stubbornly refused to fail. Eventually, the signal pointed towards a massive subterranean data complex buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, a place famously known for robust data protection. Getting in was a nightmare, relying on obsolete security protocols and a whole lot of luck. When I finally breached the main server room, the sight was breathtaking. Walls of silent, blinking lights, cold air whipping through the racks, yet the air was heavy with the presence of billions of souls. The servers were running at capacity, churning data 24/7, maintaining a connection to a network that had no active users. The sheer volume of storage was mind-boggling, far exceeding any known public data archive. This wasn't corporate data, or financial records, or even military secrets. No, those had been safely wiped, or perhaps deemed irrelevant. This massive digital fortress wasn't built to hide secrets, it was built to safeguard truth. With trembling hands, I bypassed the final encryption layer. What popped up on the monitor wasn't a document, wasn't a map, but a single, massive streaming file labeled Humanity's Final Broadcast. The weight of the moment was crushing. Was this the answer to where they went? Was it an alien signal? A farewell address from world leaders? The suspense was almost unbearable, Kalyan. I hit play. What followed was not a single, unified voice, but a cascade of raw, unfiltered human emotion. The screen divided into billions of tiny windows, each showing a person, an individual face, recorded moments before they vanished. It wasn't staged or polished. It was people in their homes, in their gardens, at their work desks, all looking directly into the camera, knowing this was their final moment to be heard. The quality varied wildly, some high definition, some grainy phone footage, but the content was universally heartbreaking and surprisingly beautiful. They weren't screaming in fear, they were speaking in love. Parents telling their children, who had already vanished, how proud they were. Spouses confessing tiny, forgotten acts of kindness they regretted not celebrating more. Artists showing their last, unfinished work. Scientists explaining the one breakthrough they couldn't quite finish. Everyone was recording their final testimony, an outpouring of collective vulnerability, a desperate attempt to leave behind not their wealth, but their worth. It became immediately clear. They knew they were leaving. This wasn't a sudden disaster. It was a planned mass departure, and their final act was the creation of this monumental digital monument to their own lives. The prevailing scientific theory for their departure, which they carefully explained in a separate, dry, technical file, was tied to a dimensional shift, a collective ascent to a higher plane of existence that rendered their physical bodies unnecessary. But the technical details didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the emotion pouring off the screen. For weeks, I sat in that cold server room, not as the sole survivor, but as the audience of billions, listening to the final, passionate roar of humanity's heart. Their legacy wasn't the concrete jungle. It was this shared, vulnerable connection. They consciously chose to preserve their stories, their memories, their love letters, knowing that physical objects fade, but digital information, powered by self-sustaining energy, could last millennia. They archived not the highlights, but the messy reality of being human, the regrets, the silly jokes, the deep, abiding affections. It was the ultimate selfless act of archiving the human condition itself. This archive wasn't for me, the accidental viewer, but for anyone or anything that might arrive long after the structures have crumbled and the earth has reclaimed the steel. So, when I finally emerged from that subterranean bunker, blinking in the sunlight of the empty world, I understood the terrifying and beautiful answer to the question, what remains when everyone is gone? It is not silence, Timan. It is the echo of their voices. It is their raw, documented emotion. It is the proof that, even facing an inexplicable departure from reality, humanity's final impulse was not destruction, but connection and storytelling. They left behind not ruins, but an infinite playlist of their own existence, waiting for an ear to listen. This journey changed my perspective on solitude. I am not just wandering an empty planet. I am tending a massive library of souls. I am the guardian of the final, digital testament of civilization. And every time I turn on one of those self-sustaining power hubs, I am reminded that their story continues, pulsing silently in the dark, reminding me that even in absolute loneliness, I am surrounded by billions of profound, digitally preserved connections. What would you record as your final message? What truth would you prioritize leaving behind? Think about that for a second. It gives you chills, right? It forces you to look at your life not through the lens of what you own, but what you truly cherish and what emotional legacy you are building right now. Because ultimately, the greatest thing we create isn't architecture or technology. It's the love we share and the stories we tell. This incredible discovery, this digital ghost of humanity, proves that our deepest fear, the fear of being forgotten, is countered by our greatest instinct, the desperate need to communicate and preserve our identity, even when facing the end. And that, my friends, is the most bombastic, emotional, and surprising truth I have ever uncovered in this silent world. Now, if you found this exploration into humanity's final act as chilling and moving as I did, please let me know in the comments below. Have you ever thought about the SEO of your own legacy? Seriously, what keywords would describe your life? Don't forget to hit that like button. If this story surprised you, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this silent world, and please share this video. Sharing is the only way these kinds of profound truths survive in this new, quiet reality. Until next time, take care of yourselves and never stop telling your story. Bye for now.